Warning, censorship. Warning, censorship.
But what's the plan for your family and your congregation moving forward?
Yeah, well, I can tell that our family and our congregation is rejoicing along with this news and along with myself and others. And so our plan going forward, we still desire to obey our Lord Jesus Christ. And we will do whatever it takes to follow him and to obey him, regardless of what the cost may be. And so we are still committed to the very same principles that have kind of gotten us into this place. And so we will continue to love one another, continue to practice hospitality, continue to fellowship, continue to worship the way that Christ has commanded. And through that, just experience the great joy of Christian worship and the relief of some of these consequences being removed from us.
Adam Soos here for Rebel News, and I'm outside of the church of Pastor Tim Stevens, Fairview Baptist Church here in Calgary. And we have an exciting update. The Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms has just announced that Alberta Health Services is ceasing all proceedings against Pastor Tim Stevens. Now, this is because, firstly, the court order under which he was arrested only applies to parties directly associated with the Whistle Stop Cafe. So the order did not apply to Pastor Tim Stevens in the first place. And secondly, he was not provided sufficient notice to comply with the order, even if it had applied. So again, all proceedings are stopping against Pastor Tim Stevens for the time being. There'll be no more court dates. He's a free man. And I'm about to meet with Pastor Tim Stevens for an update to get his account of the experience firsthand. Some exciting news today being put out by the Justice Center. Can you just tell us how much of a relief it is to hear this update?
Well, it's just great news to hear that essentially the contempt charge against me, I knew was unjust, but that's officially been dropped. And so our family and our church can take a sigh of relief knowing this good news.
That's wonderful. It's quite a change from last week. For our viewers who don't know, we actually filmed a video because the church, for fear of persecution, went underground. And there was so much concern that they might come down and arrest everybody, that the persecution would be so severe, that we actually decided not to air that footage because we didn't want the police finding that location. Maybe because we didn't do a story on that, tell us about the experience of having to take your church underground in Alberta.
Yeah, it's quite astounding that there is an underground church, and not just in Alberta, but also in Ontario and BC, other places where churches are having to meet out of the sight of the authorities because we're still convinced that we must obey God. But yet when the authorities come against us with such pressure and the power of the police, we're essentially powerless to do anything about that. And so we have to continue to gather, continue to meet, and to do such in ways that were not immediately obvious. And it's hard for us because, you think about underground church, you think about places like China or North Korea, not Alberta. Yeah. And so we're learning how to do this effectively. And so the challenge is how do we do that with the group size that we have and other churches have in such a way that we can still be faithful to our commitments and but not attract so much attention, negative attention by the authorities who are seeking to put pastors in jail.
And I know like Grace Life has been in a similar situation. There's a number of churches, as you said, that have gone underground. This is nothing new in Christian history. I don't think I have to tell you that. But maybe if you could tell people about the experience. I know I covered the event and being there felt like something of the early church. Maybe if you could tell us about that experience.
Yeah, well, it was Christian worship in its simplicity because there was none of the pleasantries that you have here in a building. It was very, very simple. Just very raw, people just coming together and those essential elements of what we do as we worship, as we come and we sing, as we hear the word preach, as we celebrate the sacraments. And so those things were done, but in a much more informal, I guess, atmosphere, and an atmosphere where people realized the cost of what it means to follow Jesus, and the cost of what it means to practice our Christian convictions, knowing that, the authorities may find us and they may come and ticket our congregants, they may come and bring me back to jail. And so there was a sense of an excitement and at the same time caution and a sense of us wanting to worship God in such a way where we understood the great cost that was involved in that, but yet we understand that Christ is worthy of those risks.
Well, one of the associate pastors here said that justice delayed does not mean justice denied in the eyes of God. But were you expecting this to happen so quickly that the government would back off and concede to your fundamental charter right?
No, I wasn't expecting this so quickly. And there's still outstanding charges and summons against myself, not in the contempt of court, but just other fines and tickets. And so I expect to be vindicated in the end as well. What's challenging is that pastors like myself and other Christians are seen in our community, and even among other Christians, as we're lawbreakers. But the truth is we're obeying God's law first and foremost, and we trust that our Charter of Rights and Freedoms, the highest law of our land, will vindicate us because these are protected rights. And so what we've seen here is that it's actually the government that are lawbreakers, not us who are gathering together for worship.
And so do you have any encouragement maybe for other pastors, maybe even Pastor Artur Pawlowski, or some of the other pastors across the country facing adversities who have not been sort of moved beyond the legal struggles of their particular battle?
Yeah, I would say for those other pastors, first and foremost, we must do what's right in the sight of God according to our own conscience. And we'll trust that the protections that have been hard fought here in Canada will end up vindicating us and protecting us against the force of the government, of AHS, and of police. And so I just encourage other pastors like Art and others to continue to worship Christ the way that he has called us to worship, and trust that God will care for his people.
Now, this is all new developments for you. I'm sure you haven't exactly planned your whole life ahead moving out after this. This is a fresh situation. But do you have any idea what the plan is moving forward? I'm sure you're going to spend some time with your family. But what's the plan for your family and your congregation moving forward?
Yeah, well, I can tell that our family and our congregation is rejoicing along with this news and along with myself and others. And so our plan going forward, we still desire to obey our Lord Jesus Christ. And we will do whatever it takes to follow him and to obey him, regardless of what the cost may be. And so we are still committed to the very same principles that have kind of gotten us into this place. And so we will continue to love one another, continue to practice hospitality, continue to fellowship, continue to worship the way that Christ has commanded. And through that, just experience the great joy of Christian worship and the relief of some of these consequences being removed from us.
Wonderful. I want to thank Pastor Tim Stevens for sharing with us with this exciting news. I also think it's fair to share thank the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms for their exceptional work in your defense. I'm sure you're extremely grateful for the work that they're doing. Like I said, we're going to continue following the story. We're not going anywhere. We're going to be here with you and see it through to the end. Thank you so much for sharing this with us. It really means a lot to us and a great deal to our viewers to be able to hear these stories when other people simply aren't telling them. So thank you so very much. And again, thank you everyone for tuning in. I want to thank Pastor Tim Stevens for sharing his story with us. One of my first experiences in encountering the Stevens family was his wife coming and thanking Rebel News for sharing their story, not twisting it. And Rebel News will always be there to share the stories of people who are unfairly targeted or who have lost their freedoms. That's what we're here to do. It seems for the time at least that Pastor Tim Stevens' legal troubles are behind him. But the developments today provide new questions in the case of Pastor Artur Pawlowski. His legal defense has stipulated that, firstly, the order that he was arrested on did not apply to him, and secondly, that he was not given sufficient notice to comply with that order. On those same terms, the charges against Pastor Tim Stevens were dropped by Alberta Health Services today. So questions remain as to whether we can expect the same sort of developments on the Pastor Artur Pawlowski case. We're going to continue telling those stories until we have a final answer. We're going to keep being a voice for those people who have been maligned and had their voices taken away. I want to thank all of you for your continued support on these stories. I'm asking you kindly all to go to rebelnews.com. If you're watching this on one of our other platforms, there's a chance that we might be disconnected at some point, and we want to be able to stay in touch and keep bringing you these stories. So make sure you go to rebelnews.com and sign up. Thanks for tuning in. For Rebel News, I'm Adam Soos. Hey everyone, Adam here with Rebel News, and it's so important that you go to rebelnews.com. We're the only ones telling the other side of the story. We don't want you to miss a thing. So go to rebelnews.com now before it's too late.